Hello, this is Brittany Williams here to present my Module 6 assignment, Behaviorism in Practice. For this assignment, I chose option A, which looked at the article, A New Look at Habits and the Habit Goal Interface. And so throughout this presentation, we'll be going over this article in two parts. The first part, we will be discussing the 3 principles of a method of understanding habits that Wood and Neal developed, followed by implications of theory to practice. So I'm going to start us off with this quote from Townsend and Bever. Most of the time, what we do is what we do most of the time. Sometimes we do something new. When we think about habit formation, this quote aligns with Wood and Neal's definition that habits are formed when we repeat past responses or actions. Habits are automatic behaviors that are elicited from specific contextual cues. And this article is an exploration of Wood and Neal's 3-principle model of habits. Wood and Neal's first principle is that habits are automatic responses to contextual cues, and they're not elicited with a goal in mind. Now, these cues can be direct, such as buckling your seatbelt immediately and without conscious thought as soon as you enter your car. Or the cues can be motivated, which means that behavior develops as a result of a feeling of reward from a response that becomes associated with a certain context cue. The authors offer the example of feeling good from eating popcorn at the movie theater. So you associate that value of response outcome onto the context cue of being in a movie theater. Like, I feel good when I eat popcorn at the movie theater. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention dopamine. So dopamine has a dual role in habit formation. And spikes in dopamine that result from repeated context response rewards contribute to the formation of the habit as well as the formation of the habit. In this video, we can see how quickly the dopaminergic areas of the brain activate when the participant is presented with a symbol that has a monetary reward. Mommy. So the parts of our brain were activated really quickly the parts of this brain were activated really quickly when the participant associated a symbol, such as this, with a monetary reward. They would see this symbol, and every time they saw it, they would win some money. The second principle is that habits and goals coexist, but they are not dependent on one another. So, for example, a habit may start because of a goal, but it can continue even after the goal is met because of the context cues. Habit development, performance, and what Wood and Neal call the neural, cognitive, and motivational substrates of action control are not mediated by a goal. Now, this is not to say that they are totally independent of each other, as we will see in the third principle. And the third principle is that habits and goals are interactive. So what does this look like? Goals can direct habit formation, whether we are aware of them or not. Now, the inverse is also true, that goals can develop from habitual behavior, that we make inferences from our past behaviors that will direct or inform our goals. Another sub-principle is that habits and goals interact and influence one another. And additionally, because our habits are formed so that they are performed with automaticity, changing our habits is difficult. So research about habits have evolved from Skinner and Watson's theories on stimulus response to Chomsky and Maurer's rejection of such a simplistic view of stimulus response, then to Guthrie's theory that posited learning occurs through repetition. It does not need to be rewarded, and it can be applied to multiple contexts. Habits are important in our classrooms and school improvement plans because unconscious desirable behaviors allow for more time to be spent on learning and also learning good study habits. So broadly, in order to change habits, educators need to encourage students to practice alternative responses. Guthrie's 1952 methods, as seen in this table, recommend 3 possible ways to initiate habit change. The first is a threshold. That's pretty much when you just introduce a stimulus, but then you increase it incrementally. But you still keep that below the trigger point for the student's unwanted response. Fatigue is another way of habit breaking. That's when you encourage the student to engage in the unwanted behavior repeatedly until that behavior stops or is modified. And lastly, incompatible response. This is when we pair the cue for the undesired behavior with a response that's incompatible with the undesired response. A key implication for the classroom and the larger school community is that punishment does not work according to contiguous conditioning. Instead of replacing an undesired behavior for a desired one, punishment simply disrupts the habit. Students need to form a new behavior, a new habit, when they're presented with a cue or multiple cues. And even though this type of conditioning does not account for cognitive processes, educators can use the premise that habits need to be formed in response to multiple cues. So for example, Shunk in 2020 posits that if we want students to follow a rule, we need to link the desired behavior that follows the rule in multiple settings in a school, the cafeteria, the hallway, the playground, each classroom that the student visits. And so I'll end my presentation with this quote. We have a framework for understanding, predicting, and changing that unique component of everyday life in which behavioral control has been outsourced directly onto context cues contiguous with past performances. In other words, our habits. Here are the references that I used in today's presentation, as well as my attribution slide for this template. So I thank you so much, and I look forward to your feedback.